The phone rang one ordinary afternoon, and my daughter-in-law, who had just converted, told me something that froze my blood. Your presence offends the faith of our home. After 68 years of life, I was being banned from my own son's house. I knew something was wrong the moment I saw him standing in our living room with that suitcase in his hand. 23 years of being his mother, and I had never seen that expression on Michael's face before. Cold, distant, like he was looking at a stranger. "Mom, we need to talk." Those 5 words hit me like a freight train. I was still in my bathrobe, coffee mug trembling in my hands, trying to process what I was seeing. My youngest son, the one who used to ask the most thoughtful questions during our family Bible studies, the one who never missed a meeting, who helped me carry literature bags during field service since he was 8 years old, standing there like he was about to deliver the worst news of my life. "What's wrong, honey? Where are you going with that bag?" He set it down slowly, deliberately, and I noticed how his hands weren't shaking like mine were. How calm he seemed, how prepared. This wasn't a spontaneous decision. This was planned. "I'm leaving the truth, Mom." The words hung in the air like smoke. I felt my legs go weak. The coffee mug slipped from my fingers and shattered on the hardwood floor we had installed last spring, the same floor where we held our weekly book study every Tuesday night. Brown liquid spread across the wood, and I just stared at it, unable to process what he had just said. "What do you mean, leaving?" "I mean, I don't believe it anymore. I haven't believed it for a long time." My throat closed up. This couldn't be happening. Not Michael. Not my baby boy who used to sit next to me during the meetings, taking notes in his little notebook, raising his hand to comment on the paragraphs. The one who went out in service with me every Saturday morning without complaint, who helped elderly Sister Martinez with her groceries after the meetings, who knew more scripture by heart than kids twice his age. "Michael, you're just going through a phase. Young people sometimes have doubts. It's normal. We can work through this together. We can study." "Mom, stop." His voice cut through my desperate rambling like a knife. When I looked up at him, really looked at him, I saw something that terrified me more than his words ever could. He wasn't confused. He wasn't lost. He was sure. I've been accepted as a youth pastor at First Baptist Church on Maple Street. The room started spinning. Youth pastor, Baptist church. The words didn't make sense together, not coming from my son's mouth. This was the boy who used to help me set up chairs for the circuit overseer's visits, who knew our songbook by heart, who had given his first talk at the Kingdom Hall when he was 12 and made everyone cry with how mature and spiritual he sounded. That's impossible. You can't just become a pastor overnight. You don't even believe in the Trinity. You don't believe in hellfire. You don't. I do now. 3 words. That's all it took to crumble 35 years of my life's work. I had dedicated every morning for 3.5 decades to going door to door, sharing what I believed were life-saving truths. I had organized Bible studies in this very living room, had missed family vacations and work promotions to attend assemblies and conventions. I had raised 4 children in the truth, and 3 of them were still faithful, still serving Jehovah, still living clean, moral lives according to Bible principles. But Michael, my baby, the one I was most proud of. "How long?" I whispered. "How long what? How long have you been planning this? How long have you been lying to me?" He flinched at the word lying, and for a second I saw a flicker of the little boy who used to apologize for accidentally breaking things. But it was gone as quickly as it appeared. "I haven't been lying, Mom. I've been struggling for 2 years now, ever since I started taking those comparative religion classes at college. The ones I told you not to take. The ones Brother Morrison warned you about. The ones that opened my eyes. I sank into my armchair, the same chair where I had rocked him as a baby, where I had read him Bible stories, where I had helped him prepare for his baptism when he was 15. The same chair where we had discussed his plans to become a ministerial servant, maybe even an elder someday. Where we had talked about him finding a nice sister in the truth to marry, raising his own children in Jehovah's organization. Michael, you were raised in the truth. You know this is the right way. You've seen Jehovah's blessings on our family, on our congregation. You've seen how the world is deteriorating, how only God's people have real peace and happiness. Have we been happy, Mom? The question caught me off guard. Of course we've been happy. Look at our family. Look at how blessed we've been. Dad left because he couldn't stand the pressure anymore. Sarah barely talks to us because she feels judged for marrying outside the truth. David moved 3 states away because he said he needed space from all the spiritual obligations. And me? I've been pretending to believe something I haven't believed in for 2 years because I was terrified of this conversation. Each word was a slap. I wanted to argue with him, to defend our family, our faith, our choices. But something in his voice made me stop. Pain, raw, honest pain that I had never heard before. The pressure? I repeated. Mom, do you know what it's like growing up knowing that every decision you make is being watched and judged? That if you ask the wrong questions, you're labeled as having a weak faith? That if you show interest in anything outside of the organization, you're considered spiritually dangerous? That's not true. We've always encouraged questions. We study together as a family. We study the same answers over and over again. When was the last time you read a book about Christianity that wasn't published by the Watchtower? When was the last time you considered that maybe, just maybe, there might be other ways to serve God that are just as valid? I stared at him, speechless. This wasn't my son talking. This was someone else, someone who had been poisoned by worldly thinking, by higher education, by the very influences I had tried so hard to protect him from. You're making a mistake, Michael, the biggest mistake of your life. And not just spiritually. What about us? What about your family? Do you know what this will do to your reputation? To mine? I've been an elder's wife for 15 years. I conduct Bible studies. I'm on the list for the circuit assembly parts. What do you think will happen when people find out my son has become an apostate? The word slipped out before I could stop it. Apostate. The worst label we could attach to someone, reserved for those who not only left the truth, but actively worked against it. I saw him recoil as if I had struck him. Is that what you think I am? I don't know what you are anymore. We stood there in silence, staring at each other across a chasm that seemed to grow wider with every heartbeat. This was my baby boy, the one who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, who would ask me to sing kingdom songs when he couldn't sleep, who told me he loved me every single day until he was 16 and became too grown up for such displays of affection. I have to go, he said finally, reaching for his suitcase. Where? Pastor Williams and his wife offered me a room until I find my own place. I start my position next week. Pastor Williams, a worldly man who didn't even know the truth about God's name, who believed in the immortal soul and the Trinity and all the other false doctrines that we had spent years learning to refute. A man who was now taking my son away from everything I had taught him, everything we had built together. Michael, please, let's pray about this. Let's call Brother Morrison, maybe Brother Taylor. They can help us work through whatever doubts you're having. This isn't irreversible. You can still come back from this. I don't want to come back from this, Mom. For the first time in my life, I feel like I can breathe. Those words hit me harder than anything else he had said, because I could see it in his face, in the way his shoulders had relaxed, in the way he was standing straighter than he had in months. He wasn't devastated by leaving the truth. He was relieved. What about me? I whispered. What about what this will do to me? For just a moment, his resolve cracked. I saw the little boy again, the one who hated disappointing me, who would do anything to make me proud. But then he straightened his shoulders and picked up his suitcase. I'm sorry, Mom. I really am. But I can't live my life to make you happy anymore. I have to follow my own conscience. He walked toward the door, and I felt panic rising in my chest like floodwater. This couldn't be how it ended. 23 years of motherhood, of sacrifice, of dedication to raising him in the truth, and it was ending with him walking out the door to join Babylon the Great. If you leave now, I heard myself saying, don't expect things to be the same between us. He stopped with his hand on the doorknob. I know. The congregation won't just let this slide, Michael. There will be consequences, for both of us. I know that too. And you don't care? He turned back to me one last time, and I saw tears in his eyes for the first time since this nightmare conversation began. I care more than you'll ever know, but I can't pretend anymore, Mom. I can't keep living a lie just to keep everyone else comfortable. The front door closed with a soft click, and I was alone in the living room that had hosted hundreds of Bible studies. thousands of conversations about Jehovah's love and the hope of the new system. Alone with broken ceramic pieces at my feet and the smell of spilled coffee and the sound of my own heartbeat echoing in my ears, I walked to the window and watched him load his suitcase into his car. The same car I had helped him buy 2 years ago when he started college, the one we had prayed over together, asking Jehovah to keep him safe during his commute. The one he was now using to drive away from everything I had ever taught him mattered. As his taillights disappeared around the corner, I realized I was still wearing my bathrobe and slippers. It was Tuesday morning, and I was supposed to be getting ready for field service with Sister Johnson in an hour. I was supposed to be preparing for the book study tonight, making sure I had the right number of chairs set up, making sure the literature was organized. I was supposed to be living my normal life, my blessed life, my life of faithful service to Jehovah. But nothing felt normal anymore. Nothing felt blessed. And for the first time in 35 years, I didn't know how I was going to face the congregation tonight and pretend that everything was fine. I knelt down and started picking up the pieces of broken ceramic, cutting my finger on a sharp edge. The blood mixed with the coffee, dark red against brown. And I thought about how some stains never come out, no matter how hard you scrub. Some damage can't be undone. That's when I heard the phone ringing, and I knew it was Sister Johnson calling to confirm our field service appointment. I looked at my bloody finger, at the mess on the floor, at the empty living room that suddenly felt too big and too quiet, and I let it ring. I told Sister Johnson I had food poisoning. The lie came out so easily, so smoothly, that it scared me. Faithful servants of Jehovah don't lie. We find other ways to handle difficult situations. We pray, we trust, we endure. But standing there in my kitchen, blood still dripping from my finger onto the phone, I couldn't bring myself to say the words that would make this real. 3 weeks passed like a fever dream. I went through the motions of normal life, attending meetings, preparing for field service, hosting the book study. But everything felt hollow, like I was watching someone else live my life from a great distance. Every time someone asked about Michael, I gave them the same rehearsed answer. He was busy with school, focusing on his studies, couldn't make it to meetings right now, but he was doing well. The lies were getting heavier. Then came the Tuesday that changed everything. I was setting up chairs for the book study when Brother Morrison arrived early, his expression more serious than usual. He's been an elder for 22 years, baptized longer than I've been alive, and I'd never seen him look quite so uncomfortable. "Sister Williams, could I speak with you privately before the others arrive?" My hands froze on the chair I was positioning. Williams. He had called me by my maiden name, not by my married name from my current husband. That was strange. Everything about his tone was strange. "Of course, Brother Morrison. Is everything all right?" He gestured toward the kitchen, away from the living room where the other brothers and sisters would soon be gathering. My heart started pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it. "I've received some concerning information about Michael." The words hit me like ice water. I gripped the edge of the kitchen counter to steady myself. "What kind of information?" "He's been seen at First Baptist Church on Maple Street. Not just attending, but apparently helping with their youth programs." I had prepared myself for this moment for 3 weeks, rehearsed what I would say, how I would react, but nothing could have prepared me for the way my knees buckled, the way the room started tilting sideways. "Who told you this?" "Sister Martinez's daughter works at the bank across from that church. She's seen him there multiple times, carrying boxes, setting up equipment. Last Sunday, she saw him talking to a group of teenagers outside after their service. Sister Martinez, the elderly woman whose groceries Michael used to carry, whose Bible study he had conducted for 6 months when she was learning the truth." The irony was suffocating. "Brother Morrison, Michael is going through a difficult time right now. Young people sometimes need space to work through their doubts. I'm sure he'll come back to his senses soon." The words sounded pathetic even to me, but Brother Morrison's expression was gentle, understanding. He had teenage children too. He knew how hard it could be. "Sister Williams, I understand this must be devastating for you, but we need to discuss the implications for your own spiritual standing in the congregation." "My standing?" "You hold positions of responsibility. You conduct Bible studies, you're on the list for assembly parts, you're married to Brother Williams who serves as an elder. The congregation looks to your family as an example of spiritual maturity. I wanted to argue with him, to defend myself, to explain that I had done everything right. I had raised Michael in the truth from birth. I had never missed a meeting unless I was seriously ill. I had pioneered for 10 years before I remarried. I had followed every principle, obeyed every guideline, sacrificed every worldly ambition for the sake of spiritual goals. What are you saying exactly? I'm saying that we may need to temporarily remove you from some of your teaching responsibilities while we assess the situation. The kitchen fell silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the sound of car doors closing outside as the other members of our book study group arrived. In 15 minutes, I was supposed to be leading a discussion about loyalty to Jehovah's organization. The irony was cruel. How long is temporarily? That depends on Michael's choices, and yours. Mine. Sister Williams, you're going to have to decide how you're going to handle this situation. The congregation needs to see that you're taking appropriate spiritual steps, that you're not enabling or supporting his rebellion against the truth. Enabling, supporting, rebellion. Each word hit me like a physical blow. This was my son we were talking about, my baby boy, the child I had carried for 9 months, nursed through midnight fevers, protected from every danger I could imagine. And now I was being asked to choose between him and everything else that gave my life meaning. I need time to think about this. Of course, but don't take too long. The circuit overseer's visit is in 6 weeks, and he'll want to review the spiritual condition of all the elders and their families. After he left, I sat alone in my kitchen while the book study continued in the living room without me. I could hear Sister Johnson's voice leading the discussion, could hear the familiar rhythm of questions and answers, the sound of pages turning, the occasional laugh at someone's comment. The life I had lived for 35 years was continuing without me, and I wasn't sure I'd ever be able to rejoin it. That night, I did something I hadn't done in years. I went to Michael's old room. I had been avoiding it since he left, telling myself I was giving him space, that he might change his mind and come home. But walking into that room felt like entering a crime scene. Everything was exactly as he had left it, except for the clothes he had packed. His bed was made with military precision, the way I had taught him. His bookshelf was lined with Watchtower publications, years of bound volumes, the same books that lined my own shelves downstairs. But when I looked closer, I noticed gaps. Books were missing. Specific books. I started checking more carefully, and that's when I found it. Under his bed, pushed way back against the wall where I would never normally look, was a cardboard box. My hands shook as I pulled it out and opened it. Inside were books I had never seen before. Commentaries by Protestant theologians, books about church history, books about biblical interpretation that weren't published by our organization. The margins were filled with Michael's handwriting, notes, questions, comparisons, page after page of his thoughts, his struggles, his growing doubts about everything I had taught him. The Watchtower teaches that only 144,000 go to heaven, read one note. But Paul clearly states in Ephesians that all Christians have a heavenly calling. How do we reconcile this? Why do we shun former members when Jesus ate with tax collectors and sinners? If we have the truth, why are we afraid of reading other perspectives? Question after question, doubt after doubt, all written in the careful handwriting I had watched develop since he was 5 years old, learning to write his name. This wasn't sudden rebellion. This was 2 years of careful study, of wrestling with contradictions, of trying to make sense of things that didn't add up. I sat on his bed holding those books, and for the first time since he left, I cried. Not the angry tears of betrayal I had shed that first morning, but tears of recognition. My son hadn't abandoned God. He had been searching for God more seriously than I had ever given him credit for. The next morning I called him. "Mom?" His voice sounded surprised, cautious. We hadn't spoken since the morning he left. "Michael, I found your books." Silence. "I read some of your notes." More silence. "Honey, I need to understand. Help me understand what happened. Not the theology, not the doctrine. Just what happened to you?" When he finally spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. "Mom, do you remember when I was 16 and I asked you why we don't celebrate birthdays?" "Of course." Because of the pagan origins, because of the beheadings in the Bible. And do you remember what I said when you explained that? I thought back. You said it made sense. No, Mom. I said okay. I never said it made sense. I just said okay. Because I learned very early that asking too many questions made people uncomfortable, that expressing doubts made people worry about my spiritual condition. So I learned to say okay to everything, even when it didn't make sense to me. But you participated. You gave talks, you went out in service, I performed, Mom. I was a really good performer. I knew all the right answers, all the right behaviors. But inside, I was drowning. Do you know what it's like to sit through meetings week after week, hearing about how wonderful our organization is while watching them shun Sister Peterson for asking questions about the blood policy? While watching them disfellowship Brother Thompson for reading a book about archaeology that contradicted our timeline for Jerusalem's destruction? I remembered those incidents. At the time, I had seen them as necessary spiritual discipline, protection for the congregation. But hearing them through Michael's eyes, they sounded different, harsher, more frightening. Michael, those people were causing division. They were putting their own understanding above the organization's guidance. Were they, Mom? Or were they just thinking for themselves? It's the same thing. Is it? The question hung between us like a challenge, because suddenly I wasn't sure it was the same thing. And that uncertainty terrified me more than anything else he had said. Mom, I have something else I need to tell you. My stomach dropped. There was more? I'm engaged. Engaged? The word came out as a whisper. Her name is Rebecca. She's Pastor William's daughter. We've been together for 8 months. 8 months. He had been living a completely different life for 8 months, and I knew nothing about it. While I had been worrying about his spiritual condition and making excuses for his absence at meetings, he had been falling in love with someone whose father represented everything I had been taught to avoid. 8 months, Michael? I wanted to tell you. So many times, I wanted to call you and share what was happening in my life. But I knew you'd be upset, and I knew it would cause problems for you with the congregation. So you protected me by lying to me? I protected you by giving you plausible deniability. The phrase hit me strangely. Plausible deniability. Like I was a criminal who needed an alibi. Like my son's happiness was something I needed to be shielded from. When's the wedding? June 15th, 3 months away. Will I be invited? The long pause told me everything I needed to know. Mom, you'll be invited, but I need you to understand what that would mean. It's going to be at First Baptist Church. Pastor Williams will be performing the ceremony. There will probably be media there because it's part of a larger event about religious freedom and family reconciliation. Media? Mom, my story, our story. It's become something bigger than just our family. Other young people who've left controlling religious groups have reached out to me. Pastors from different denominations have asked me to share my testimony. There's interest from publishers about a book. A book. My son was writing a book about leaving the truth, about leaving me. What kind of book? A guide for young people who are struggling with restrictive religious environments. How to think critically about what they've been taught. How to transition to healthier faith communities. Every word was another nail in the coffin of the life I had built. Not only was I losing my son, but he was going to use our story, our family, our faith, as an example of what was wrong with religion. 35 years of faithful service, and I was going to be remembered as the controlling mother who drove her son away from God. Michael, you're destroying everything I've worked for my entire adult life. I'm trying to build something better, Mom. For myself and for other people who are struggling the way I struggled. By destroying me in the process? That's not my intention, but that's what's happening. The conversation ended with neither of us hanging up, just silence stretching between us until the line went dead. I sat holding the phone for a long time, thinking about plausible deniability and religious freedom and the sound of my son's voice when he talked about the woman he loved. A woman I had never met. A woman whose father was everything I had been taught to fear. That afternoon, Brother Morrison called to inform me that I had been removed from the list for the upcoming circuit assembly. Temporarily, he said, until the situation with Michael resolved itself. But I was beginning to understand that this situation wasn't going to resolve itself. It was going to change everything forever. And I had no idea who I was supposed to be in this new reality where my faith and my son existed on opposite sides of an unbridgeable divide. The isolation started slowly, like a tide creeping in. At first, it was just the removal from teaching responsibilities. Then Sister Johnson stopped calling to confirm our field service arrangements. Brother Peterson found excuses not to work with me in the ministry. The invitations to social gatherings dried up. Even Sister Martinez, whose groceries Michael used to carry, would look away when she saw me at the Kingdom Hall. I tried to tell myself it was temporary, that once Michael came to his senses, everything would return to normal. But as winter melted into spring, I began to understand that normal was never coming back. The breaking point came on a Tuesday morning in May, exactly 6 months after Michael had walked out my front door. I was sitting in my kitchen, staring at the newspaper, when the phone rang. The caller ID showed my sister Linda's number from 2 states away. "Margaret, we need to talk." Linda's voice was tight, controlled, the way it got when she was trying not to lose her temper. "What's wrong?" "Your son was here last weekend." My blood turned to ice. "Michael? He spoke at 3 different churches. 3, Margaret. He's giving presentations about escaping oppressive religious cults, using our family as his case study." I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles went white. "What did he say?" "He talked about how you monitored his reading material, how you discouraged friendships with non-believers, how you used guilt and fear to control his behavior. He described specific conversations, Margaret. Things that happened in your house, in your family. Private things." Each word was a stab to the chest. Those private moments, those intimate family discussions about faith and morality and staying close to Jehovah had become Michael's talking points for audiences of strangers. He mentioned the time you found those Christmas decorations in his school locker when he was 10 and made him throw them away himself. He talked about how you cried when he wanted to join the debate team because it might expose him to worldly thinking. He even described the prayer you made him say when he got detention for talking to a disfellowshipped classmate. I remembered that prayer. I had crafted it carefully, asking Jehovah to forgive Michael for associating with someone who had been cut off from his people. I thought I was protecting my son's spiritual health. Now it was being used as evidence of psychological manipulation. "Linda, you have to understand. I was trying to raise him according to Bible principles. Everything I did was out of love." "Margaret, he made you sound like a monster." Monster. The word echoed in my head long after Linda hung up. Was that how my son saw me? As a monster who had damaged him so severely that he now made a living telling other people how to escape mothers like me? That afternoon, I did something I hadn't done in 35 years. I drove to the public library and used their computer to search for information about my son online. What I found destroyed me. There were videos, hours of them. Michael sitting in church sanctuaries, standing at podiums, speaking to groups of young people about spiritual abuse and religious trauma. His face was confident, peaceful, glowing with the kind of joy I remembered from his childhood. But the words coming out of his mouth were about me. "My mother genuinely believed she was serving God," he said in one video. "But the organization she belonged to had taught her that love meant control, that protection meant isolation, that faith meant never questioning anything. She became an instrument of spiritual oppression without even realizing it. Instrument of spiritual oppression." My son had reduced 35 years of faithful service, of sacrifice, of genuine love and concern for his spiritual welfare to that phrase. I watched video after video, seeing my life dissected and analyzed by my own child. He talked about the birthday parties he never attended, the friendships he never developed, the questions he never asked. He spoke about living in constant fear of disappointing God, of bringing reproach on Jehovah's name, of losing his family's love if he stepped outside the narrow boundaries of acceptable behavior. "The saddest part," he said in one particularly painful clip, "is that my mother thinks she failed me when I left. But the truth is, she succeeded perfectly. She created exactly what her religion wanted her to create. A child who was so afraid of independent thought that it took me 23 years to realize I had the right to think for myself. I closed the laptop and sat in the library parking lot, crying harder than I had cried since my own mother died. This wasn't just about losing my son anymore. This was about discovering that everything I thought I knew about love, about faith, about motherhood, might be wrong. That evening, I got the call I had been dreading. "Sister Williams, this is Brother Campbell from the Circuit Overseer's office. We need to schedule a meeting to discuss your family situation." The meeting was held the following Thursday in the back room of the Kingdom Hall, the same room where I had participated in countless judicial committees for other people over the years. Now I was the one sitting across from 3 elderly men who held my spiritual future in their hands. "Sister Williams," Brother Campbell began, "we've become aware that your son has been actively speaking against the organization in public forums." "Yes, I'm aware of that. And you understand that this creates a serious problem for your standing in the congregation?" "I understand that my son's choices reflect poorly on my family. Yes. It's more than that, Sister Williams. The Circuit Overseer has reviewed the videos of your son's presentations. He's not just expressing personal doubts. He's actively campaigning against the truth, using intimate details from your family life to support his arguments." Brother Morrison, who had been silent until now, leaned forward. "Margaret, the question we need to ask you is this. Are you going to take steps to distance yourself from this behavior? What kind of steps? Public disavowal. A statement to the congregation making it clear that you don't support your son's actions and that you remain loyal to Jehovah's organization despite his rebellion. Public disavowal. They wanted me to stand up in front of the congregation that had been my spiritual family for decades and officially reject my own child. And if I don't, then we'll have to consider whether someone who cannot maintain proper spiritual order in their own household is qualified to remain in good standing in the congregation." The threat was clear. Disown my son publicly, or be disfellowshipped myself. I asked for time to consider my decision, but I already knew what I was going to do. Because that morning, I had received an email that changed everything. The email was from Rebecca, Michael's fiancée, a woman I had never met who belonged to a faith I had been taught to despise, was reaching out to me with a kindness that shamed me. "Dear Mrs. Williams," it began, "I know this situation must be incredibly painful for you. I want you to know that Michael talks about you constantly. He loves you so much, and it breaks his heart that his spiritual journey has caused you pain. He's not trying to hurt you or destroy your faith. He's just trying to be honest about his own experience. I would love to meet you, not to change your mind about anything, but just so you can see that the man you raised is good and kind and still has all the values you taught him, even if he expresses them differently now. Our wedding is June 15th at 2 p.m. at First Baptist Church on Maple Street. You are welcome there, not as someone who needs to choose sides, but as Michael's mother, who deserves to see her son happy. With love and respect, Rebecca." I read that email 17 times. A stranger was showing me more grace and understanding than my own spiritual brothers and sisters. A woman who had been raised in false religion was demonstrating more Christ-like love than the people who claimed to have the truth. June 15th arrived gray and drizzly. I woke up that morning knowing I had a choice to make. I could go to the Kingdom Hall for the regular Sunday meeting, maintain my standing in the congregation, and miss my son's wedding. Or I could drive across town to a Baptist church and watch my baby boy marry a woman I had never met, knowing that my presence there would be seen as spiritual treason. I put on my best dress, the navy blue one I usually wore to circuit assemblies. I did my makeup carefully, the way I always did for important spiritual occasions. And then I drove to Maple Street. The church was beautiful in a way that surprised me. Simple, elegant, filled with flowers and soft music. Nothing like the flashy, ostentatious displays I had been taught to expect from Babylon the Great. As I slipped into a back pew, I saw Michael at the front of the church, wearing a black suit that made him look heartbreakingly handsome. When he saw me, his face lit up with such pure joy that I started crying immediately. He mouthed, "Thank you," across the sanctuary, and I realized that this moment, this choice to be here, was the first thing I had done in months that felt completely right. The ceremony was simple and beautiful. Pastor Williams spoke about love that transcends difference, about faith that embraces questions, about families that choose compassion over judgment. When Michael and Rebecca exchanged vows, promising to support each other's spiritual journeys even when they led in unexpected directions, I understood something that 35 years of Watchtower studies had never taught me. Love doesn't require agreement. Love requires presence. After the ceremony, Rebecca approached me with tears in her eyes. "Mrs. Williams, thank you so much for coming. This means everything to Michael." "Call me Margaret," I said, and hugged her. She felt small and warm and real in my arms, not like the evil seductress I had imagined. Just a young woman who loved my son. "Margaret, I want you to know something. Michael prays for you every day. He asks God to help you find peace, to help you understand that his leaving doesn't mean he doesn't love you. He's not your enemy. I'm beginning to see that." That evening, I sat in my living room, still wearing my wedding dress, thinking about everything that had happened. My phone had been ringing all afternoon. Word had gotten out about my attendance at the wedding. Brother Morrison had left 3 voicemails asking me to call him immediately. I turned off the phone. For the first time in 6 months, the silence in my house didn't feel oppressive. It felt peaceful. I wasn't waiting for Michael to come home anymore. I wasn't trying to fix something that wasn't broken. I was just sitting in the space between my old life and whatever was coming next, and it was okay. The next morning, I received a letter from the congregation. It was formal, typed, signed by all the elders. I was being disfellowshipped for conduct unbecoming a Christian and failure to maintain proper spiritual boundaries. My 35 years of faithful service had been reduced to a single paragraph explaining why I was no longer welcome in the only community I had ever known. I should have been devastated. According to everything I had been taught, I had just lost my salvation, my spiritual family, my hope of eternal life. But instead, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Relief. That afternoon, I called Michael. "Mom, are you okay? I heard about the disfellowshipping." "I'm fine, sweetheart. How was your honeymoon?" "Mom, I'm so sorry. I never wanted this to happen to you." "Michael, I need to tell you something. I spent 35 years thinking that loving you meant controlling you. I thought that protecting your faith meant protecting you from questions. I was wrong." "Mom, let me finish. You didn't leave God, honey. You went looking for him in a bigger room, and maybe it's time for me to do the same." 6 months later, I was sitting in a small coffee shop with 5 other women, all of us former Jehovah's Witnesses, all of us learning how to rebuild our lives after losing everything we thought we knew about God and faith and truth. The support group had started with just me and 1 other woman, but word had spread quietly through networks of people who understood what it meant to choose love over dogma. I never thought I would be grateful for losing my son, but losing him the way I did, watching him choose courage over comfort, authenticity over approval, taught me something I never could have learned inside the walls of the Kingdom Hall. Faith isn't about having all the answers. It's about being brave enough to live the questions. Michael and Rebecca visit me every Sunday now. We have dinner together, and sometimes we talk about God, and sometimes we don't. But we always talk about love, about acceptance, about the courage it takes to be exactly who you are, even when that disappoints people who matter to you. I'm learning that the most sacred thing I can offer my son isn't my agreement with his choices. It's my presence in his life, regardless of those choices. It's showing up with open hands and an open heart, ready to love him exactly as he is. It took losing everything to discover that love is not about control. Love is about freedom. And sometimes the most faithful thing you can do is let go.